Let's talk about the election. Where are things at? What are the polls showing? Did the vice president debate change anything between Kamala and Trump? Where are we at? 50-50. Every swing state. And now, every swing state, by that I mean the three: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. The other swing states, not as close. Arizona's leaning more towards Trump. Nevada's a toss-up, but I think maybe leaning a little bit towards Kamala. Um, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, neck and neck. There's no light between these guys. I mean, it is right down the middle. Did the vice presidential debate change anything about that? Well, maybe. And the reason I say maybe is because generally vice presidents don't really make much of a difference. And I think that's probably the case here. But when you have three states that are that important and the margins are so small, even if the debate changes the mind of, say, 10,000 people in Pennsylvania, that could make a difference. And in this case, it is really that close. In my opinion, it's gonna come down to a few thousand votes in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And right now, I don't know which way to predict that, because that margin is so close between them. So, what were some of the high points and sort of things that stuck out during the debate? They were very cordial to each other. It was a throwback to the pre-Trump era. Now, a lot of younger people don't remember what it was like when politicians could have a debate and say, yeah, we all believe that we need to get more Americans working. It's just how we get there that we disagree on. That used to be sort of the foundation of American politics, at least when I was coming up. People would say, hey, look, these are the facts. This is what we're seeing. We're struggling to keep manufacturing jobs. We're struggling to grow the middle class. How do we get there? And Republicans said we get there through a free market, and Democrats said we get there through sort of more regulation and sort of federal government control. That went away during the Trump era. Things got turned on their heads. Republicans stopped being free market. Democrats turned more towards populism than, Donald Trump is very much into populist rhetoric, although as president he wasn't very populist. Everything got turned topsy-turvy, and this was a throwback to that era where they would say, yeah, I agree with you, I just disagree with how you're trying to get there. I agree with you that immigration is a problem. I disagree with the solutions that you're proposing. I agree with you that, manufacturing jobs need to stay in the United States. We need to build up our middle class. I disagree with you on how you think that's going to happen. I think that's healthy. A lot of people thought it was boring. And that's why figures like Donald Trump have risen to the top of American politics, is because they're more fun. They're more interesting to listen to. Policy-wise, much more vacant. But fun-wise, when people want to report on something, having somebody say something crazy about Haitians eating cats in Ohio, that was on the airwaves forever. There really wasn't a moment like that for them to pick up on, because it was much more even keel. It was a normal debate. Now, I think Vance did better performance-wise pretty much throughout the debate. He was answering questions. He wasn't shying away from some of the harder questions for Republicans to answer, like abortion rights or things like that. I think he did well. He sounded articulate. He sounded intelligent. I'm not really going to get into, whether things were true or not, but I think he sounded good. He sounded confident. He looked good, and he looked confident. Walz looked nervous. He did not look as competent or confident as Vance. So I would have said, yeah, Vance walked away with this. I mean, the man's a Yale-trained lawyer. He obviously knows what he's doing, and he did a good job. Walz is a school teacher. He kind of often has a hard time in situations like these. He's a decent communicator, but his campaign even put out like, hey, debates aren't really Walz's thing. They were sort of messaging he might not do as well, and I think he lived up to that. For some people, I think that was endearing, because they think, if I was on that stage, I would also be nervous, I would also stumble, and so for some people, I think that worked. A lot of the post-debate polls show that people who liked Vance going in continue to like him. People who leaned Republican but didn't like Vance, tended to like Vance more by the end of it. People who liked Walz tended to think Walz won and liked how he did it. And people who didn't like, either of them and are independents weren't convinced by either of them. So I think it was a wash in that sense. There were a couple of moments that stuck out for me. One was Tim Walz was asked, hey, why did you say you were in China during the Tiananmen Square massacre if you weren't actually there until 2 months after that took place? Now, a reasonable response to that would be, listen, I was there during that protest movement. I didn't mean to say that I was there during the actual massacre, just that I was there during that period of time, and that impacted the way I think about freedom and the way I think about democracy in light of those protests that happened during that time period that I was in China, although I wasn't there at the exact moment that it happened. Would have been a reasonable response. What he said was, I'm a real knucklehead. Sometimes I lie about stuff to get people on my side. In essence, he said, I get caught up in the rhetoric and I'm a knucklehead. Fine, but is that who you want to be the last person in the room with the president when they're deciding whether to go to war with Russia, whether to go to war with China, whether to go to war with Iran? Do you want a knucklehead who sometimes lies because he thinks people will like him better? I don't know. I feel like that should be replayed more often. I'm seeing it sort of cast in a positive light as, oh, this guy's just like us. I don't want someone just like you in the White House. I want somebody who's competent in the White House. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. I did not like his answer to that. Now, the one that stood out for me with Vance, he was asked point blank, did Donald Trump lose in 2020? And he could not answer. He just tried to deflect, which is the best thing he could do. He could not answer. That is a red line for Trump. You can say anything you want about policy because Trump doesn't care about policy. But when it comes to did Trump lose the 2020 election, he couldn't say yes. And that is damaging to their ticket. And if nothing else, if the Kamala Harris campaign takes that little snippet and just plays it over and over and over for independent voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, I think that could move the needle. So in that sense, I think this debate may have mattered. It may have mattered, but I don't know. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I will say defend Vance a little bit on his, hey, you said you weren't going to fact check me comment. At one point, he gets fact checked by the moderators and he says, hey, you said you weren't going to fact check me. Those are the rules. And that's being played off as sort of him saying, hey, I thought I could lie here and you weren't going to call me out. That's not actually what was happening. If you actually listen to the full clip, what he's saying is, you're fact checking me, but my facts aren't wrong. Let me explain myself if you're going to call me a liar in front of everybody. And of course, they cut off his mic before he could really say that. And I don't think that was fair. And I don't think that is being portrayed by the media accurately. Anyway, so that's where we're at right now. The polls are dead even. There's no daylight between these candidates in the states that matter. Of course, in states like Utah, where my vote doesn't matter all that much, Donald Trump is winning by a wide margin. There is no threat to him here. And in states like New York and California, Kamala Harris is winning by a large margin, and it doesn't really matter there. But in the states that matter, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and slightly to these other states in the South, and over here in the desert, Nevada and Arizona, it's a dead heat. It's a dead heat. There is no daylight. It's a coin toss. Anybody could win. It could be a storm in the wrong place, and one of them could win over the other. There's no daylight between these candidates. Will this debate that happened a couple days ago change things? Maybe. And the reason I say maybe is because of that one answer by Vance. I think he won the rest of the debate, but when he could not say that Donald Trump lost, for a lot of independent voters, I think that is a single issue that they will vote on, is we want somebody who respects democracy and who is going to put democracy over their own interests. And when you can't say that you lost when you lost, that puts some doubt on that, on your commitment to the longevity of democracy. And for some independent voters in those swing states, I think that may make a difference, and it might push the needle slightly towards Kamala Harris, but who knows?